There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 21st of February. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens.
And on the show today, reality TV's tired redemption arc casting and who we want to see shimmying in sequins. Also, the birthday girlies draining our bank accounts and the billionaire who wants to live forever. If you date him, you have to give him your blood. But first,
In case you missed it, the carry-on baggage bubble is about to pop.
One thing about me is that when I show up at the airport with just a carry-on bag, I feel like I've won the invisible airport game.
Now, there is nothing that will make people more angry than talking about the use of overhead lockers on planes. I know this because on a recent flight, I was travelling with you, I believe, Hol.
Yep.
We both had carry-on because we had short turnarounds straight from the airport. And so we got on late and we didn't have room in the overhead locker.
Yep.
And I said or posted something about, I think it's selfish when people put their little handbags in the overhead locker.
I actually do agree with that. Although I will say, if you're sitting in an exit row, you have nowhere to put it.
I got cancelled for that.
You did?
People got very angry at me and they said, how very dare you not check your bag in? It's your fault. Why didn't you check your bag in?
You
And
had
I'm
a
like,
carry-on bag.
but nobody, like the thing is that in the olden days, people did not bring suitcases onto planes really. And now no one wants to check in their baggage. And so everybody has these just small enough to get away with it. But it means you've then got hundreds of people on the plane who all have a big bag.
Yes, but every individual person is doing the right thing. They're operating within the law of the plane. And this is what's frustrating is that you look around and you go, I don't think there's enough space for all our bags, which is an airline issue, not a Mia
Or
Freedman
they
issue.
change the rules, which is probably what they're going to do.
well, there was a big story in the Atlantic this week and Ian Bogost has a theory about why there's never any room and why suddenly everybody's got everything in the overhead lockers. He explains that the airlines overbook their seats. I don't know if this happens in Australia. This was written in America. But then they count on no-shows and people changing their flights to make the system work to ensure that all flights are sort of as full as possible because that's the most economic way to run an airline apparently. And apparently this is what they're doing with the overhead bins. And he writes, what if the airlines are allowing more carry-on luggage than a plane can even hold? What if they're overbooking those compartments in the hope or expectation that some passengers will simply check their bags in instead because they're frustrated? Now, of course, the problem when there is no room in the overhead locker, they said, well, we're going to have to send yours down the thing. And of course, our bags didn't make the plane and it was a whole big drama. I felt that it was victim blaming when people said it's your fault because they say very clearly if you've got two bags, only one of them can go in the overhead locker and it should be the biggest one. The other one has to go under the seat in front of you.
Our problem was we were late to the plane. So it was our fault, really.
It wasn't. There should be space.
If you're travelling with a big carry-on bag that's in the rules but is still big, I've travelled with Lee Campbell in this situation and she is a highly efficient, anxious person. And she's like, if I've got to carry on, I am at the front of that queue.
We've learnt our lesson now too.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll go and you'll look for space and people have got their jumpers in there or their little handbags in there, a carry bag with some magazines they bought at the airport or a bottle of water. That's not acceptable.
We need to just put down some basic etiquette because I think that some people have missed the memo. If it fits under your seat, it's going under your seat.
Correct.
We're not putting it in a thing. Did you know as well that your carry-on needs to go up like a book? It's meant to go side on. We're not putting it flat. So if everyone's putting it flat, then it's taking up more room.
I don't understand what you mean.
Okay.
Sideways, on its
Sideways.
narrowest edge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's got to go narrowest edge. That's the only way it's all going to fit.
No one's ever told me that.
Well, that's why I'm here to help because there's a crisis afoot.
Okay.
So that's what we need to do. If it doesn't have to go up there, please don't because there's nothing worse than getting on your flight and you've got to put underneath.
My friends, Dancing with the Stars still exists. It was a bit of a shock to me, actually, that it still exists. Do you know it's 20 years old in Australia, Dancing with the Stars now? It's been on for 20 years.
I
right?
always mean to watch it, but because I struggle with free to air and knowing when it's on, I think it would be good fun to see celebrities
I went
dance.
through a phase in the early days of watching it. I used to enjoy it. I liked it when they'd have hot boys on who would like take their shirts off. And it's often fun watching people who are really bad. I'm
Chris
waiting for Mia
Hemsworth.
to go on.
It was a novelty. What?
I'm waiting for you to go on.
I used to get asked. They don't ask me anymore.
That would
which
be
means
fun.
I feel like you'd love it.
Do you know why? It means I think they've moved past the D list and they're just really going to the far reaches of the alphabet.
Oh, they have Julie Goodwin. I think she's A-list.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, she is. That's true.
This year, they've got Lisa McCune.
Are you kidding me?
No.
So they've gone back to the top.
They've got Nova Paris. They've got Samantha Jade. They've got Julie Goodwin, as discussed. And they've got Ben Cousins. Now, Cousins is the former AFL superstar whose name is never mentioned without the words troubled or bad boy. And this inclusion on the latest cast has produced a predictable amount of debate. And I want to unpack it because I've written about Cousins before. You always get a lot of feedback when you do, and I am very, very conflicted about it. What do you know about Ben Cousins, Mia?
Well, I was talking to Mamamia's editor, Eliza Sorman-Nielsen, this morning when we were preparing for the show, and she said that they'd published a story about this yesterday and there was big pushback about the fact that he's been to jail for crimes, I can't remember what they are, I think something about stalking or drug addiction, I'm sure you will. Now he's on, and the overwhelming response was, give the guy a break. He did his crime, he served his time, let him be redeemed.
Well, this is what I want to unpack, right? Because Cousins is charismatic and handsome, and in his football days, he was freakishly talented. Like, he's on the list of the 500 best players of all time. He's AFL, right? And he played for Geelong and he played for West Coast Eagles. His career was always marred by the fact he had these addiction issues to meth, among many things, for 20 years on and off. He's been in rehab many times. He's been in jail twice. He has been filmed in all kinds of public confrontations. He's done redemption interviews and then he's fallen off the wagon again. But this time, for the past sort of 4 years, I mean, obviously one can't say, but it appears that he's clean, it's stuck. He's been doing lots of volunteer work with vulnerable youth in WA. He plays football for a local team there, and he's a Channel 7 sports reporter now. So he's like rehabilitated. And so everybody says second chance, or in this case, 30 millionth chance for Ben Cousins, please. And that's fair enough. But here's my conflict, right? He was last in prison in 2020, and it was his second stint in there. He was not in prison for drug possession, although drug possession was always involved in the charges too. He was actually in prison for stalking the mother of his 2 children. He had breached, at that time, a family violence restraining order more than 20 times. He had, and some of these details I'm about to read out are like really quite disturbing. So, you know, if that troubles you, please take care of yourself. He had called his former partner, the mother of his 2 children, over and over and over again, calls climbing into the thousands, and this was all read out in court. He had threatened to kill her. She had to move house in secret, afraid for the safety of their children. He was imprisoned in 2017 for doing the same thing against the same woman. So we're talking about years and years of terrifying erratic behaviour. The court heard that on one occasion in that period, Cousins got into a car with his partner while holding a screwdriver and told her, "I can't wait to use this." The court also heard that he said, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take your life and your freedom and the things you love the most." And they heard that he threatened to bury her in her car, where she would survive for a couple of days, and then he would bring the kids to play so that she would hear them but not be able to get to them.
Oh, my God.
Now, Cousins did not follow through on those threats, and he went to prison for them. But the thing is in Australia, many men do follow through on threats like that. We know that we lose at least 1 woman a week to domestic violence, and we know that very often the perpetrators have got a history of breaching AVOs or having served time for domestic violence offences. Just this week, you've probably been reading about the case of Kelly Wilkinson, who was desperately trying to get help from police because she knew her husband was tormenting her before he murdered her in Queensland in horrific circumstances. And just last week, another Queensland man was charged with murder after hitting his wife with a tractor. My conflict is this. Ben Cousins has done his time. He's battling a disease that is almost impossible to shake off in the form of a deep, deep addiction like that. But also, in a country where women are murdered by their partners at a deeply alarming rate, is this really the guy we want to see tangoing around in a sequined waistcoat?
This is about Ben Cousins, and it's also not about Ben Cousins. It's about our apparent complacency towards men murdering their wives and their children.
But he didn't. I don't think that's necessarily fair because he didn't.
But I think that's where our anger's coming from.
Oh, I see.
So what we're
Yes.
seeing
I
is
think
that
my reaction to it
Yes.
is tied up in these other cases, even though obviously he didn't do
So
that.
we're projecting. We're going, one woman every week is killed by her partner. We have a man who breached this order 22 times. We are calling him troubled, which is, as you say, the word often used. A woman who has too many drinks is troubled. A man who breaches a restraining order 22 times is troubled. They're different. They're very, very different. And so I think looking at Cousins, our anger is actually about what he represents. And do you have the right to be rehabilitated? I want Ben Cousins to have another chance. I don't want you to have to sit in the pit of shame for the rest of your life. But do I think he has the right to a public platform? No, I don't think he does. There was an incredible article on Mamamia by Nicole Madigan, and she said it's almost having him sit there among sort of heroes, like Australian heroes or role models. And the message that it sends to women and to children is your experience doesn't matter because they can just be on Dancing with the Stars within 4 years.
There's something about the wholesomeness of that show because this is
it's a
something
family
also
show.
that SAS Survivor reality show does, and they've done that with lots of men like Craig McLachlan and
last year when they had Cassie Sainsbury on, who's the woman who had done the time for the cocaine importation, there was a lot of pushback about that too. But that's a different kind of show.
yeah, that is a different kind of show. And interestingly, on that show, you watch them suffer because they have to do these incredibly difficult things. And so it's almost quite cathartic if you believe in that idea of moral justice or some kind of justice, because you watch them suffer and they then get in the confessional time, they get some softball questions to put forward their version of events or
But they have to acknowledge
humanise
it.
themselves.
And this is Ben Cousins. Even I was reading, a few years ago, he was talking to a footy club, right? And he'll talk about his past. It's always about drug use, his own suffering, his own spiral, what it cost him in terms of his football career. From what I could tell, and I went pretty deep on this, he has not publicly acknowledged what happened in terms of criminal charges with his wife.
and the terror of his children and his wife.
Yeah.
And who knows how she feels about it today.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. So she's sitting there. She has children that she's caring for, that she's attempting to protect.
Who are no doubt traumatised.
Yeah. How's her career going?
There's something about Dancing with the Stars. You're right. In SAS, they have to face it. They have to acknowledge it. They have to talk about it. They have to live or die by whatever they then say about it. And of course, they're given nice edits and it's softball questions. And that's no doubt part of their contract when they sign. But they get to show remorse. This is such a frothy, bubbly,
Free pass.
that is everyone sitting around with their kids watching, the funny sequence. It's a comedy show essentially, and it's a variety show.
I find it really upsetting because we all know, like working at Mamamia and obviously writing about these kind of cases where women are harmed or killed, there very, very often is this long tail of breached violence orders. I think it's really important that men, and maybe particularly young men, can see that you can come back and that you can learn to put your life back together from a very dark place. And I think that's really important. But I also just can't imagine a circumstance where we would permiss this if it wasn't about violence against women.
To me, this speaks to Australia's community apathy, because these are always business decisions, right? If Channel 7 thought that this was risky enough to turn people off, they wouldn't do it. There's plenty of people they could put on that show.
Exactly, right? You are exactly right. At the bottom of why I feel uncomfortable about this, when I do believe in rehabilitation and I do and we get this reaction, this is what Eliza was telling you today when you write about Ben Cousins or you talk about it, I think partly because he was so famous at a particular point in time and he was so loved by a certain group of people, and he is handsome and charismatic and funny and all those things, that ultimately we don't care enough about the pain and torment he put his family through.
Well, it's not seen as disqualifying.
No. So what is
It
disqualifying?
reflects its audience, which is saying, we don't think that you care enough and we don't think that you're going to dismiss this man because of, his
And they
past
haven't,
crimes.
it
but
seems.
it's also shaping I think that putting men like that on television isn't just reflecting, it's shaping, because what it's saying is if you are a man who is currently breaching an apprehended violence order, give it a few years and everyone will forget.
I know.
Like, that's really the messaging that's being sent.
And I guess, I'm not a fan of cancellation, and I don't believe that people should never be able to make a living and all those things. But when Australia is in the grips of these horrific statistics that I was talking about as we were leading into this, I feel like if you're adjacent to violence against women, you should be on the bloody bench. Listen, I know that was heavy, a lot of that discussion about domestic violence. And if that has brought anything up for you, or if you're struggling in any way, the links to organisations who can help and support you are in our show notes. So go and look.
Mamamia out loud.
By the way, I scanned your food and it comes to a gazillion dollars.
In this week's instalment of Cozzy Lives, we need to talk about the rise of birthday girlies and how they're sending their friends broke. The birthday girlie phenomenon is what happens when main character syndrome meets your birthday. And it has sparked this new breed of birthday girlie, a woman who has big demands and big expectations that everybody celebrates her on her birthday. In Refinery 29 this week, there was a story called "Birthday Girlies Are Draining Our Bank Accounts and Enough is Enough." And Alicia Lanson wrote, "Wanting big foil number balloons and 700 photos capturing the day doesn't make anyone a bad person, but being friends with a birthday girlie often comes with a lot of expectations and expenses. What usually begins with one main event can often expand into a series of offshoots, including dinners and group activities, all of which require different outfits, locations, and most important of all, cold hard cash. For a lot of us, one day of fun results in many months of debt." Isn't that interesting? I don't know anyone like this.
Oh, I do.
I do.
There's a psychologist who was asked about this syndrome, and she says that the reason certain friends might act that way can be down to something as simple as their temperament. I mean, you could say they were a narcissist, but I didn't say that. She says typically people who want to celebrate birthdays in a big way involving lots of people are extroverts who like fun, like a party, and like bringing people together. However, there are other reasons why a birthday girlie might ignore costs. And she says it might be that they've just got lots of money and they don't realise that other people don't have the same amount of money as them, which is interesting. And of course, the problem is that birthday extravaganzas aren't the only expensive events that people often silently, and always women, are dealing with. Like, we're not talking about birthday boys. I don't know any of those. This is kind of a syndrome about women, because women are the ones that have these celebrations around all these life milestones, particularly sort of in your 20s and 30s. You've got hens parties, weddings, baby showers, kids parties. Jessie, I don't think I've ever been invited to an event for your birthday or yours, Hol.
Well, aforementioned.
Which seems rude.
Holly and I are Christmas babies. No one's coming to our birthday.
We can't do this kind of shenanigans.
I'm going to reject the premise that there's no such thing as a birthday boy, because the biggest birthday girlie I know is a man every single year. And I actually love it. He says, I want to create memories and experiences that everyone remembers. And he'll do something really fun, like we'll go away and he'll do it like heaps in advance.
The birthday guy.
The birthday guy. And it's more about what other opportunity do we have to go away together or whatever.
And is it expensive though?
Oh, so expensive. But he gives everyone the opportunity to say yes or no, or gives them a heads up 6 months in advance so that
to start saving.
Like,
how much money would one cost, for example?
The last one, we went away for a weekend and we did wineries, which I'd never done that, so I quite liked having the opportunity. But it was definitely, I reckon, accommodation was $200 a night, and then we went out for dinner at this such expensive restaurant. It was like $120 a head, and then everyone was drinking, but I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant yet, so we had to cut.
Oh, no.
It was anyway, so it was quite expensive. But I really liked a quote that was in this article that said close friendships can basically withstand slightly uncomfortable conversations. This friend actually who organises these doesn't have a lot of money. He's just selective about what he spends money on. But some people I know, money is invisible. If you have a lot of money, it's invisible because you don't realise what $90 is to someone. And if you need to say, I actually can't afford that.
But
Or
doesn't that make you a bit of a dick?
to say I can't afford it?
No, the other way. Not thinking to yourself, I don't want to put anyone in this position, because you might adore this person, male or female, but that might not be how you want to spend that money. You might even have the money, but you don't necessarily want to spend it in that way.
But if that's how they want to spend it, and if a $120 bottomless brunch, maybe you don't have lots of money, but if that's how you want to spend it for your birthday, all power to you. You spend it there and you don't go on a holiday, whatever. But I just think we've got to be empowered to say, no, I can't afford that.
We've got to be empowered to say, no, I can't afford it. And we've also got to be big birthday girly pants enough to handle it when someone says that to us. Because the problems here start when the WhatsApp group opens up and it's Betty's birthday. We're all going here. They've got a set menu. It's only $120 a head.
Not including
plus
alcohol.
wine.
Yeah. And her over there will get 4 cocktails, which we're just splitting at the end.
Exactly. And someone will come in the group and say, I'd love to celebrate your birthday. And they will either make up a little white fib, can't that night, can't that
when
day.
is it? Here's a word of advice. Always ask when it is before you say I can't make it.
Or they might say, and I've seen this in my group chats recently, like, can't spend that much money that month. I'd love to celebrate you in another way another time. The key is birthday girly has to be cool with that. Birthday girly can't then be like, well, if you really loved me, I think you'd find $180 to spend on me on my birthday. Everybody has to be cool about it. I'm not a big party, I don't like parties and things, as you know, but sometimes for biggish birthdays, I do want to go to a posh restaurant because I really do like that and I hardly ever get to do it. So I'll be like, I want to go somewhere quite fancy. And I'll fall over myself saying to the people I invite, it is so cool if you don't want to come. Like, I don't mind if it ends up just being me and Brent and the waiter, because I'll make him come even though he won't want to spend the money either. That's all right. I just want to go there, right? No one believes you when you say that. And I hate to think that there's like a cohort of people over there going like.
So tip for birthday girly, may I suggest the pub? The thing about the pub is that if you want to get one Diet Coke, you can. And I've seen this where people show up and they're like, oh, I just ate before the pub.
Doesn't feel very special though.
There are beautiful pubs that you can go and hang out all afternoon and buy one soft drink, as opposed to sitting down with a menu. It's
elastic. Like people can just come for an hour if they want, or they can settle in and order the oysters if they want.
Yeah, you don't have to eat. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are going, I don't even like this cuisine and I've just spent $120 on it. What do you think about the idea that if you're a birthday girl, you have to pay for everyone?
I think if you're a rich birthday girly, that's okay. Remember Em Vernon wrote that piece recently about if I go out for dinner with my rich friends, I want them to pay. Do you remember that? And there was a lot of debate.
Set the internet alight.
Set the internet alight. I know people who, you know, it might be a big birthday for them and they want people to go to the fancy restaurant like I do, but I'm not paying. And they will say, our shout. And you're like, amazing, happy days. But that's a big call. Like you would have to be pretty fancy. In our circle, it's actually more the birthday girly doesn't pay.
I know, you've got to subsidise theirs too.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And that's fun when they choose the restaurant, plan it all, and then you have to just split the cost.
Mamamia out loud.
Outlouders, if you want to listen to us every day of the week, you can get access to exclusive segments on Tuesdays and Thursdays by becoming a Mamamia subscriber. Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe and support us, and a big thank you to all our current subscribers.
I have become obsessed with a man named Bryan Johnson. He is 46 years old, he is a multimillionaire, and he refuses to die, ever. He won't die.
Speaking of narcissists.
Yes. I listened to Johnson yesterday on the Trevor Noah podcast, and I learned that in 2013 he sold his company to PayPal for $800 million.
$800 million.
And then I think he was in his 20s and he just looked around and went, what now? I've got all the money in the world. What does one do now? And I thought, relatable problem for us all.
Yep.
He says that just like 200 years ago, if you told someone that there were these tiny microscopic germs that you can't see with the naked eye and they have the power to kill you, and if you just washed your hands, it could be life-saving, there are probably lots of things now that are the key to longevity. So his question is, in 50 years, what's the thing or the things we'll look back at and go, that small thing could have bought me another 30 years? And here's what I need you to know about Bryan. He has collected a team of medical experts to use him as a human guinea pig. He has taken all the knowledge that exists about health and he is putting it to the test. He takes 54 pills every morning. He exercises daily and he fasts for 23 hours to avoid aging. He has reportedly reduced his biological age to 18 and recent projections suggest he could live up to 200.
Sounds like a fun guy. He also looks really strange.
He looks really strange.
He looks like an alien. So he used to be a tech bro and just look like a normal, regular kind of tech bro. And now he dyes his hair this weird shade of auburn and he looks like he's got no body fat. So his body's obviously changed and that's changed his face. But he also he looks very feminine in his features, like he's had surgery to sort of feminize himself.
So tech bros, I don't know if this is a new flex, but I saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg recently. They're glowing. Like I think it's all the money or like they're injecting something that is making them superhuman looking.
They say longevity is the big boom area. So the tech bros are all super into it. And Bryan Johnson is like the extreme. He is at the far end of the...
Because he's dedicated his whole life.
Yeah, it's basically his entire life is... He says, because I listened to a podcast interview with him too, he asked the interviewer, he said, what's your number one priority today? And he said, your number one priority, you don't know it, but it's to not die. He said, my number one priority every day is to not die, and it's the only priority I have. So every single thing he does is about not dying.
Well, you said that he goes to some extreme measures.
He does.
I need to talk about his penis. He revealed on a recent podcast, A Diary of a CEO, that he was 2 months into a course of experimental shockwave therapy on his penis. I'm going to let Bryan explain this one.
There's this technology, you have a wand, you sit in a chair, and then the technician uses the wand and basically shocks your penis through the acoustic technology. It does the same thing as workouts doing, where you're creating micro injuries so then it rebuilds. So while my scores are, I have no sexual dysfunction, I score perfect in every category, we're wondering if you take this therapy, this focused shockwave therapy, and if it will just basically rejuvenate the penis and increase nighttime erections.
Is there any early evidence that that's working?
Yes, I've been shocked by the results. I'm now 2 months in. My subjective experience is it's as if my penis has gotten like 15 years younger.
On the subject of penises, Bryan's obsessed with his penis, right? He says that nighttime erections are like one of the greatest indicators of health. So he has this device that measures his penis overnight. It measures not only the erection, but the stiffness of the erection. And he's up to about 4 hours of erection at night, in case you're wondering.
But it mustn't wake him up, because he does say that sleep is 100% the most important thing you've got to do, and that his entire day is geared around his sleep. So those erections, hopefully they're not like literally poking him awake.
No, he went 8 months with perfect sleep. His most controversial age-slowing measure recently has been donating plasma to his father, who is sick. He donated a litre of his own plasma. Oh, but doesn't Bryan need a litre of plasma? Yeah, he took it from his 17-year-old son, right? And he said that it reduced the age markers of his father significantly. This is what the rich are doing.
Can I talk about his penis briefly?
I would love that.
Because the question that this all begs is, what is living? And what is a penis? What is a penis for? So if a penis is just you want really good sexual health, but if you don't have sex, what is the point?
Well, he's saying he literally looks at his penis like a blood test in terms of what are the markers of my penis and what does it tell me about the health. So does he have a beautiful dating life?
He doesn't. So he recently posted about what he shares on first dates, because he says expectations are important. He's very transparent. He says, number 1, 11 a.m. dinner. Number 2, 8:30 p.m. sleep. Number 3, no pillow talk. 4, you sleep alone. 5, no small talk, really don't care. 6, no sunny vacations, because he stays out of the sun, and he often will look at the pollution and he won't leave the house if the pollution is above a certain level. 7, here we go, scheduled sex. Don't know how often. Number 8, veggie daddy. Not sure what that means. Sounds slightly rude, but I think it just means you've got to be a vegetarian. 9, this is a good one, must give plasma. I don't know if it's give it to him. I think you've got to be part of this plasma circle within his family.
Which is very expensive.
Number 10, and this is my favourite, you're not my number one priority. He has a little bit of self-awareness. He then said, unsure why I'm single.
Yes, exactly.
I want to unpack. I was listening to this interview and I was riled. I was going, the hubris of a man believing he can never die. He has 3 children. Why is he never waking up? They're adult children, but still, that just upset me. I need to unpack that because on the other hand, this man is doing some really important science. In the US, there is a lot of money being made from people being unhealthy and staying unhealthy. He's got all the money in the world. He's not saying you should live like this, but he's hoping that these technologies can trickle down to all of us. So is what he is doing noble, or is he...
I think he's also selling stuff.
Yes.
Including hoodies that say don't die.
Yeah. He's an eccentric billionaire, right? And he is...
I think he's a millionaire. I checked the billionaire thing.
Guess you're not if you only have 800 million that you're spending at 2 million a year to keep yourself in this tippity-top shape and paying all that team of people to endlessly measure your erections. Like, oh, Jesus
That'd be
Christ.
a great job. What do you do for a living? Well, funny you
know
should ask.
Bryan?
Yeah.
So
Put that on your LinkedIn and smoke it.
he's an eccentric, very, very wealthy man who is living in a very eccentric way. But the thing is, as I said, this longevity business is trickling down. So they say that the anti-aging industry, and they don't mean wrinkle creams when they say anti-aging, they mean literally anti-aging, is estimated to be worth about $610 billion by next year. Like, it is a big, big growth area that everybody's interested in. And he's also obsessed with the fact that our little mortal lives that we've all been living forever, with death being the only actual certainty, are just going to be obsolete because AI, the superintelligence, is governing us all. And why would you trust your brain and your body and your instincts and your knowledge with how to keep you alive when you can trust a superintelligence? And his sort of approach to that is he's like, we've done away with paper maps because we've got GPS. You know, we've done away with all kinds of choice-making equipment because we've got algorithms, right? So now everything's served to us. We wear smartwatches that do, if you want them to, tell you when to stand up, when to eat, when to sleep. And that's how he lives. So he sees himself as like an explorer at the far frontier of a place we're all going to go. To me, he's not as irritating and angst-making as those kind of more middle-of-the-road wellness obsessives who are always telling you what to eat and not what to eat and all of those things, because he's kind of doing something so out there that it's really only about him. I mean, literally his entire life is about him. He says he's the most measured man in the world.
And only he can do it because of his access to money. So one thing that he said about his father was that he was noticing cognitive decline, and he's basically trying to work out if you can reverse cognitive decline. I want that research done.
I want that too.
So in that way, he is very, very noble, I suppose.
I've been reading about him and watching interviews with him for quite a while. I find him super creepy. And also it's an interesting challenge mentally to think, well, if you're living forever but your quality of life involves eating 80 pills at 6 a.m. and then a couple of leaves at 11 and then going and having tests and not having any human interaction, no spontaneity. And I was like, well, could a woman do that? And interestingly enough, this week we learned that a woman called Kate Tolo, who is his chief marketing officer of his company and of this whole movement program that he's now doing, he said to her, would you like to be the second person in the world after him to try my program? She's a 27-year-old Australian woman from Mackay, and she said yes. And here's a little bit of a video where she talks about what it's like.
Here's what my 30-day blueprint trial would look like. Sleep. My goal is to get 100% sleep score every night, which means that I can't shift around my bedtime for work deadlines or for partying. Nutrition. I'll be eating the same food every day. Nothing added and nothing missed. And that includes the powders, the olive oil, the chocolate, the iodine drops. Everything will be included. Supplements. I'll be having over 60 pills every day.
It's interesting. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun. And she was asked in this interview about the idea of living, not just staying a sentient being on Earth for a bit longer, but actually living with all the spontaneity and novelty necessary to create, you know, memories. So ultimately, is an extended life worth more than what many people would consider a more expansive one? And she said, I'm a person of sacrifice. Prior to Blueprint, my life was full of plenty of sacrifices. Now the sacrifices involve a level of consistency. Do you go out and have the 12 margaritas, as you mentioned, or do you get to sleep and have a good night's sleep and have a high heart rate variability for the next morning so you feel fantastic and ready to tackle the day? Except the day is just about doing more of that.
Bryan Johnson says that his experience of living, he has never been happier, he has never been clearer. So he's very happy in the life that he's living. He doesn't see it as simply sacrifice. But the other point I want to give him and her for what they're doing is medical science has meant that we treat illnesses and that we have extended human life. What he is about is making sure that that extended human life is spent in a state of health. So our issue is that we have a lot of people that spend 10, 20 years alive but not able to live because they
can't enjoy their quality of life because they're impaired. Yeah.
So if he's able to find, if he can reverse cognitive decline, if he can say eating this and drinking this and prioritizing sleep means that you can live to 150 and 148 of those are going to be great.
Sounds like you've come round.
This is the thing. I'm very much, but then I listen to him. And what I hate is when people tell you to prioritize sleep. It was just the fact he said 8 months of perfect sleep. And I was like, my baby is nearly 8 months old. Do you think I'm not trying to get perfect sleep when she wakes up?
No, but see, here's the thing, because I'm with you. I think he probably is doing important work. But the insidious part of this is this publicity trail that he's on at the moment. So he's on 14 different podcasts. He's doing all these different interviews.
What's he selling? He's selling the Blueprint,
right?
Well,
he is. And he's opening up the Blueprint protocol, as it's called, to like other millionaire type people who can afford it. But what he's selling to me is shame, right?
This is it. This is what I'm upset about.
What he's selling to me is that when I was listening to him on the train this morning, some of the things he said about like the best way to get a good night's sleep is to make sure, and he spouted something about your heart rate's low, da-da-da. And I'm like, no, Sap, heart rate low before bed.
And then he remove family from life.
And so what he's selling me
Take plasma
is like,
from children.
I could be a better version of me. Like he believes that he is currently the ultimate version of himself. And this is a scale. And as I said, it's easy to get irritated by the people in the middle of the scale of self-optimization, which is everywhere you look. And he's just kind of the shiny extreme of it. It is important work, but I almost need to see him as like a bit like a lab rat. I need to see him as an experimental lab rat whose some parts of what he's discovering will be useful, but don't make the rest of us feel suboptimal.
And I don't want Bryan living to 300 while the poor live to 60. That's my worry, that it's just the disparity is going to grow.
I have a recommendation for some words that I never thought I'd say together. It's called sleeve garter.
Pardon?
I know. It sounds like something that they would wear on Downton Abbey, which I've been watching quite a lot of, but it's actually got nothing to do with that.
Where's your bonnet?
I discovered this great lady startup. It's an Australian brand. I think that they're called the Basic Band. So they do two products, basically. They sell the Basic Band, which is this elastic tucking belt. So I can't really explain it. We'll put a link in the newsletter at the end of the week.
Tell me what you'd wear it with.
So say you've got a T-shirt that's too long or a shirt that's too long, or you want a dress that's maybe
shorter.
Yeah. So you use it and then a bit like tucking stuff into your undies. You know when you like tuck stuff up into your undies?
It gives you something to tuck things into.
Yeah, exactly. And you can roll your T-shirt under it I don't mean for wearing crop tops, although you can if you want to, but it's to basically change the length of any top. Does that make sense?
Smart.
Yeah, super smart. And that was one product that they sell. But the other product that they sell that I like more is this sleeve garter. Now, I have been using bracelets for this same purpose. So, I'm a sleeve roller-upperer or puller-upperer. Not everything rolls up. Some things just don't. And also, you often don't want to roll jacket sleeves up. And some things just slide. I wear a lot of slidey fabrics or sequin fabrics. So what this is, it's the same principle as the Basic Band around your waist. It looks like these bracelets that you can get them in gold or silver or black, and you put them over your sleeve and then you pull them up.
And it keeps it in place so it's not constantly coming down.
Correct.
Oh, that's smart.
And then $19.95, I've bought them for all my girlfriends, for a pair of them. They're just so good. They're just one of those things that is so helpful. And once you've got them in your wardrobe, you realise how many uses they have. Yeah. I mean, that is if you are someone who likes to roll the sleeves up of whatever you're wearing.
You once told me I was wearing something, I can't remember what it was, and I was like, do I look cool?
It was a jacket.
Yeah, because I always, if I've got to go and do a presentation, I'm like, do I look cool or do I look a bit, I'm worried about looking middle-aged, whatever. And she's always like, roll your sleeves up. And she's right. Yeah, it's a good style tip.
That's my biggest style tip for making jackets look cooler or making your outfit look cooler is roll up your sleeves.
Nice.
So we will put a link in our newsletter on Friday.
If you're looking for something else to listen to, and if you noticed actually that in the last episode of Out Loud we had a social video go up, and you might have noticed something a bit different about Mia's face. I'm going to tease it there. I'm not going to say what it was. But we unpack Mia's different face. Yeah. It's like going out to dinner with the three of us, where Holly and I get to ask all the questions. You have to be incredibly honest. You grapple with your feminism, as you often do.
You do. Here's a little sneak peek, Out Louders.
You love a bandwagon, and the bandwagon was coming by. And I feel like...
I think you're right about the waves. I just think because I've gone through, there's Out Louders will know. There have been phases where I've should I get it, should I not? And then I just don't care about it. Like Holly, I just did it on the peak of one of those waves a couple of years ago.
A link to that episode will be in our show notes.
Thank you, Out Louders, for being with us through another wonderful episode of Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. I'm just going to say it was wonderful. It was wonderful for me. Was it good for you?
It was great for me.
I enjoyed it.
It was great for me. It was almost like a 4-hour nighttime erection.
Not quite that good.
Not quite.
Do you think that anyone is measuring vaginal health? Is my vagina a sign of my own health?
Yeah, what's your vagina doing in the night to be happy?
I'd like to measure it. I don't know what I'd measure.
Well, I don't want to think about that.
Is that
what I would measure? Misogyny that we're like,
yeah.
He's got one of those bands like Mia puts on her sleeves and he just pops around. Anyway. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman, with audio production by Leah Porges. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do it. There's a link in the episode description.